Hey, what's going on, fam? So, I know I said I was done with the Pan-Africanism versus the ADOS debate. However, I got on a live stream. I was invited to a live stream last night to debate a Pan-Africanist on ADOS. And I didn't get to say everything I wanted to say on that live stream because there was a long lecture involved and everybody responding. And then, I was doing my best to be patient and let everyone take their turns. So with everyone taking their turns talking, because it was, it wasn't just me, it was me and several others on the live stream. And I'm going to provide the link in the description box, by the way, to the live stream that I'm referring to. But because there were so many people trying to get their points in, and a lot of people were long-winded, especially the person who was hosting the live stream, I didn't get to say everything I wanted to say. Plus, I ended up getting kicked out the stream at the end, probably because I was talking too much real talk. So because I didn't get to say everything I wanted to say, I want to just make a real quick, real short video just addressing some final things that Pan-Africans and Pan-Africanists are doing out there, or trying to put out there in order to attack ADOS, and just expose how ridiculous, hypocritical, and desperate Pan-Africans have become. So number one, if you watch the video, if you cut through all the talking and all the pontificate, at the end of the day, the Pan-African solution is to build Wakanda. Why do I say that? Because when I was debating on this live stream, like I said, I'm going to put the link in the description box so anyone can see for themselves if they think I'm lying. When I tried to challenge this brother on the fact that there are no African countries that black people, black Americans, or Caribbean countries for that matter, that black Americans can turn to for refuge, and why aren't we putting the same do-for-self energy that we're putting on ADOS to try to convince them not to follow this movement? Why aren't we putting that same do-for-self energy on people who have a whole African country in their native land with an African government? His excuse was, oh, all African governments are controlled by white supremacy, which I agree. But at the same time, ADOS are into white supremacy. But you still have no problem telling ADOS that the solution is to do for self. But people who have their own country can't do for self. And if the excuse is that Africans have white supremacist governments, why don't they do for self and remove those white supremacist governments? What's so hard about that? If we got to do for self and keep rebuilding after the white supremacists have stolen so much from us, which is why America is what it is today, for all of the stealing that they have done. If we're just going to give up and say they don't have to pay us back because it's hopeless for them to pay us back, and we got to do for self because of white supremacy, why can't people who have their own country do for self? I don't care if the white supremacists are supposedly controlling it. Remove the white supremacist control, just like you want me to build my own economy with no resources. And then the brother's solution was, we need to go outside the system. We need to go outside the system. We need to go outside. We can't go to African countries. He admitted that because I challenged him on why is he living in America, such a white supremacist hellhole, telling other Americans that they shouldn't try to get anything from their American government, telling them how hopeless it is to try to get something from an American government. And when I asked the question, well, why aren't you in an African government trying to get something from an African government so that a movement like ADOS would have never came into existence, because of all the hard-working Pan-Africans like yourself would have been in another country long ago, getting an African country to produce tangibles so that ADOS have somewhere to go to escape the white supremacist hellhole called America. Especially since, like you said, it's so hopeless to do anything in America. He admitted that because that was his only excuse to justify why he's still residing in such a white supremacist hellhole that will do nothing for Americans, is because he admitted there's nowhere else to go. So if there's nowhere else to go, why aren't you, as a Pan-African, trying to create a place where there is somewhere to go? Why aren't you working within an African government so that there is somewhere to go? Wouldn't it be easier to remove the white supremacy from an African government than it would to be from a white government? Especially since you're a Pan-African and you think the African people are also open and so receptive to Pan-Africanism, even though we point out as ADOS the immigrant vitriol towards African Americans and the continental African vitriol towards African Americans. When we point that out, that's not true that's only some, blah, blah, blah. So if there's so many Africans willing to get down with Pan-Africanism, why aren't you at least down there with the African people, getting them to overthrow their white supremacist governments? And that way an ADOS movement would have never come into existence. And then his other argument is, well, ADOS has been tried before, but like I pointed out in my other 3 videos, if that's the case, so has Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism has been tried before, and to this day, we still have no modern day tangibles. So if ADOS has been tried before, and we still have no tangibles, Pan-Africanism has been tried before, and we still have no tangibles. So his solution was, we need to go to a place, and we need to go create a place that's outside the system. That was his direct answer. What is the place that we already know of? The one place that exists besides North Sentinel Island, which is obviously, other than the fact that they're on code against white supremacy, is otherwise primitive. The fact that they're on code against white supremacy, the North Sentinelese are highly advanced than any other black person on the planet. I'll give them that. But as far as their actual infrastructure, they're primitive. Nobody can deny that. And if you don't know who the North Sentinelese is, Google North Sentinel Island. Or watch, and I would recommend but Google North Sentinel Island, Tariq Nasheed, because Tariq does a good explanation of what the North Sentinelese are and who they are. So what other place besides North Sentinel Island, which will kill anybody, and probably including other black people, not just white people, but including other black people who step foot onto their island, what other place exists untouched by white supremacy? Wakanda, which is a non-existent fictional place. But that is the only other place on the earth that exists outside of white supremacy. So when this brother keeps saying that we have to go outside of white supremacy, we can't go to the government, especially the American government, because it's so racist, he is saying the solution is to build Wakanda. When you cut through all the intellectual pontificating, because I don't want to waste y'all's time, because he does an 1.5-hour long lecture of wasting time just to get around to the final point that the solution, instead of ADOS, is to build a real life Wakanda. That's one point I wanted to expose. The second point I wanted to expose was, this brother keeps accusing myself and the other brothers who were on the stream and even on Twitter today, because that was yesterday. I'm making this video the day after the live stream. Today on Twitter, he keeps accusing myself and other brothers that we don't read. And on the live stream, he did it also. But the problem is, I do read. I've read Blueprint for Black Power. I've read The Destruction of Black Civilization. I've read Ururu. I've read etc. books. Probably some books he hasn't read. I've read a lot of books. But I'm not an intellectual masturbator. An intellectual masturbator is someone who pontificates and espouses a bunch of knowledge to expose how much they've read, but the knowledge is not leading to anything practical or tangible or realistic. It's just a display of how much you know. That's what goes on if some of you are familiar with Sa Netter's channel and Sa Netter's debate stage. These Hebrews, these Moors, sometimes the Nation of Islam, all these people who've done reading a bunch of books, get on stage, debate using a bunch of PowerPoint, showing what they've read, quote unquote exposing each other, a bunch of intellectual masturbation that does nothing to put a dent in white supremacy. That's what Sa Netter's channel is. And that's one of many reasons why I don't really watch the channel anymore. There's a couple other reasons, like the association with Scammer Polite and things like that. But one of the main reasons why I don't watch the Sa Netter channel anymore is because I realize it's just a bunch of intellectual circle jerking. That's what it is. When people get up and they pontificate with no real point and just to waste time, that is a term that's called intellectual masturbate. And that's what all this quote unquote us ADOS don't read. This ignorant assumption that because I don't agree with you and I haven't come to the same conclusions as you, I don't read. Let me tell you who else who reads. Barack Obama. That's someone most Pan-Africans will speak against. Michael Eric Dyson, a liberal, mainstream liberal puppet that tries to direct black people into voting for Democrats and tells black people and writes books like Sermon of My Tears or something like that. I know that's not the exact title of the book. Michael Eric Dyson wrote some some book about tears and crying to white people. You know, some book that's going to teach white people about racism, as if 100 books like that haven't already been written. And it's all a bunch of, oh, white people, racism is so painful for black people. Please understand us. That's the type of stuff Michael Eric Dyson does. He's a doctor. He has a doctorate. These people read Barack Obama, Michael Eric Dyson. I can name a bunch of faux intellectuals who have all kind of degrees. Kamala Harris reads. She has a Juris Doctorate, which is a JD for you don't know. That's what you have to have in order to be a lawyer. All these people read, but we can see they're not very smart. Even in my personal life, I've been on dates with women who have master's degrees. But when I talk to them about substances, and I only have an associate's just to be full disclosure. But when I talk to them about substantive things, I can see they're not that bright. But all of a sudden now, reading books and intellectual masturbation equates to being intellectual? Really? Is that where we're going now, Pan-Africans? So that's the other argument. Oh, we don't read because if we read the sacred text of Pan-Africanism, we would agree with you. We wouldn't dare disagree with you. No, brother, I've read probably every book you've read, if not more. But I don't brag on that, and I've never bragged on that. And I didn't brag on it at all in the live stream, even though he kept consistently bragging about what he's read. Because if what you read is not practical, there's no point in bragging about it. But that's all Pan-Africans have left, so they must brag about what they've read. And then the last point I want to address is them saying they don't need to talk about ADOS because it's going to fail anyway. Well, I agree. If you know something's going to fail and you maybe try to put out one warning and we give you the kind of pushback that we've given you because ADOS has a lot of momentum, you should just back up and give off. And that's what the brother Omowale said last night. I don't need to talk about ADOS at the end of the stream after he kicked me out. I don't need to talk about ADOS. I don't really have to say nothing. I don't really care. I don't have to. Yet he wrote an article that I put a link to in my second Pan-Africanism versus ADOS video, the Pan-Africanism, ADOS versus Pan-Africanism Part 2 video. He wrote that article. He spent countless tweeting about ADOS. Then he did an hour-and-a-half lecture monologue to debunk ADOS, and then spent another 3 hours debating ADOS people. But he don't care about ADOS. Also, a channel that he's appeared on, and I'm going to put their link in the description box. I just saw in my live stream, the Federation of African Liberation, ran by a sister, or partly ran by, at least on YouTube, a sister named African Esquire. They're doing a stream tonight, once again attacking Tangibles 2020 and ADOS. This is a channel that Brother Omowale Africa, the person who I debated last night, has appeared on before. This woman is another Pan-African. So all these Pan-Africans claiming they don't need to talk about ADOS, they need to talk about ADOS in order to stay relevant. Because I can promise you, you can see that even on my channel. My videos about ADOS, and I didn't do it for this purpose, but my videos about ADOS have gotten way more views than any other video on my channel. And again, I did not do it for the purpose of getting views. I honestly believe what I said. That's why I made freaking 2 hours worth of videos espousing what I believe. But even on my channel, it's evident that ADOS got the most views out of anything. Or my videos about ADOS got the most views out of anything. And that's what these Pan-Africans are doing. That's why they keep talking about ADOS and Tangibles 2020. Because if it's so doomed to fail, once you've presented your case, all you have to do is sit back and watch it fail. But you're afraid that it won't fail. And you're aware as a Pan-African that your movement has already failed, as I detailed. So if anybody wants to get in this comment section and debate and argue about whether or not Pan-Africanism has failed, I challenge you to watch all 3 of my videos, ADOS versus Pan-Africanism. I'm tongue-tied a little bit. Parts 1, 2, and 2.5. And 2.5 is really because 2 was originally intended to be one video, but because of time, it ended up being 2 videos. I challenge you to watch all 3 of those videos and still come back and try to tell me Pan-Africanism has not failed, especially under the standards of what success or failure is by Pan-Africans, which is whether or not you've gotten things done in the past. That's their standard of success, is whether or not you've gotten things done in the past. So if that's the standard, and we correlate that to today, what still stands that was done in the past that still stands today, Pan-Africanism has failed. And I challenge anyone to listen to all 3 videos. Don't listen to 1 or 2 and then come back and try to debate me. I made 3 videos to intelligently debunk every point that these Pan-Africans made. But anyway, like I said, this video is not intended to be very long, so I'm done. I'm going to put the links in the description. I'm going to put the link to the live stream that's coming up tonight by the Federation of African Liberation, African Esquire crowd, that's coming up tonight. And I'm going to put the link to the live stream last night in the description box. And like I said, I want to warn you guys, this brother spends the first hour and a half giving a pointless lecture, so you can skip through the first hour and a half to 2 hours, even 2.5 hours if you wanted to get to where I'm in the debate. And you can see how it's undeniable that the Pan-African solution is to build a real-life Wakanda. And let me say this while they're running from it. If my plan was to build a real-life Wakanda, I would just admit it. I would say, yes, that's what I want to do, because nothing else will work. The only thing to do is to build a real-life Wakanda. But they don't want to admit that, because the term Wakanda exposes how much of a fantasy and how unrealistic their strategy is. So they, of course, run from saying and will not confess to the fact that their solution is to build Wakanda. But they don't really have a way to prove you wrong when you boil it down to those simple sentences, those 2 words. Build Wakanda. That's all it is. Build Wakanda. And then a bunch of shaming because we're not intellectual circle jerkers. And we don't want to have an endless debate for 8 hours while getting nothing done. Which is also something that he admitted to in one of his responses. There's been a debate among Pan-Africans for a long time. Exactly. Because all y'all do is circle jerk. That's why y'all are debating and not getting anything done. And like I said, this is a brother who I consider somewhat of an associate, even though we haven't met in real life. We're really bumping heads over this ADOS versus Pan-Africanism thing. And to me, this brother's really exposing himself. He's really exposing himself when it comes to Pan-Africanism. That's really just a religion to him. A religion that you blindly follow and read the sacred text of. And a religion that you don't have the ability, or an ideology that you don't have an ability to jump ship from when you realize it's failed, because it's your religion. Me, like I said, I believed in all the stuff he believed in. But because it wasn't my religion, when I saw, hey, this maybe isn't practical, I jumped ship. And anybody should be able to do that. When they realize something they thought was working isn't, they should have the ability to change direction. But when you've made something like Pan-Africanism your religion, you can't change direction. It's just like with a Christian. Being a Christian. Once you've made that your religion, you can't go to other Christians and say it doesn't make sense. Because it's their religion. It's not something that's based in logic anymore. And it's the same thing with Pan-Africanism. Maybe it started based in logic, but now it's a religion. And these Pan-African brothers on Twitter and on YouTube debating me are proving it. And like I said, I challenge anyone with sense. Don't be scared. If what you believe is to build Wakanda, say it. But you don't want to say it because you know me phrasing it that way exposes how much of a fantasy it is. But long story short, you want to build a society that is free of white supremacy, and you can't point to any ones that exist right now. So that is exactly what a Wakanda is, a non-existent place that has never been affected by white supremacy. But anyway, fam, like I said, that's the closing of the video. Like, share, subscribe. That's another video. Peace.